Remember those true crime stories? The ones we couldn't get enough of
Hmm.
back in the 70s and 80s?
Oh, yeah.
Well, today we're diving into one that has it all. Wealth, British aristocracy, a shocking murder,
Hmm.
and a mystery that's still unsolved to this day.
Wow.
It's the story of Lady Lucan. And I think you're going to find it absolutely gripping.
Oh, I bet. What I find so fascinating about this case is that it's like peeling back the layers of this seemingly perfect life, And then you see the darkness underneath. It really makes you question everything you think you know about people
Yeah.
and the secrets they keep.
Right. And you've shared some incredible source material with me about this case.
Yeah.
And we're going to explore it all. The events of that night, back in 1974, the disappearance of Lord Lucan, and the life of Veronica, Lady Lucan,
Right.
a woman who was just thrust into the center of this whole tragedy. And it would define her for decades.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, they probably just remember Lady Lucan as, the wife of. But her story's so much more than that. She's a complex person, shaped by society, by her own struggles, and ultimately this unimaginable trauma.
Absolutely. So let's start at the beginning. With Veronica Duncan, before she was Lady Lucan, her early life, it was marked by loss. Her father died when she was really young. And she kind of split her childhood between England and South Africa.
Yeah.
Not exactly your typical upbringing for someone who ends up in, British high society.
Right, right. And yet, her path crossed with John Bingham, who would become Lord Lucan. They met at a golf club gathering. Just imagine, this chance meeting changed both their lives. He was this dashing figure. I mean, people said he was like a real-life James Bond. Handsome, charismatic.
I read that he was actually considered for the role of James Bond at one point.
Oh, wow.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Makes you wonder how things might have turned out if he had actually gotten that role.
Yeah, it's like this what if in the whole story. But yeah, back to their story. Things moved fast. The courtship was a whirlwind. I mean, there was this pressure, this societal expectation that it was time for Veronica to settle down, find a husband,
Right.
and their wedding. It was small. Not many people there. Veronica herself said there was practically nobody there.
Wow. Not exactly a fairy tale start for a lord and a lady.
Not at all. And honestly, those cracks in the foundation, they just got wider after the honeymoon phase.
Yeah. So Lord Lucan was known for his gambling. And apparently he gambled away a lot of his inheritance early on in their marriage, starting married life in debt, huh?
That's where things get kind of ironic. Because shortly after all this, his father died. Suddenly, John becomes Lord Lucan.
Oh, wow.
Inherits a ton of money. They bought this beautiful house at 46 Lower Belgrave Street in London, the same house that later becomes the scene of this awful tragedy.
It's almost Shakespearean, this sudden change in fortune. But even with this grand house in the title, you can tell from Lady Lucan's own words that the marriage was not a happy one. She wanted to appear happy, to fit into this high society world, but she felt disconnected from her husband.
Right, their priorities were completely different. He was obsessed with social status, with gambling.
Right.
And Veronica, she felt more and more isolated. Plus, there was all this pressure to have an heir, another strain on the relationship.
Of course.
They did eventually have 3 kids, Francis, George, and Camilla, but they relied a lot on nannies to take care of them.
So basically, they had this image of wealth and privilege. But behind closed doors, it was a different story. You can just feel that tension building.
Yeah, absolutely. And then things get even more complicated when Veronica becomes friends with another gambler named Greville Howard.
Okay.
He offered her emotional support, something she was missing in her marriage. Lord Lucan was not happy about it.
This is where the story starts to take a darker turn, right?
Yeah.
He didn't react well to this friendship at all.
Not at all. He became controlling, possessive.
Oh, wow.
Started accusing Veronica of being mentally unstable, which is a theme that really just takes over their lives from this point on.
Right.
It's a classic example of these power imbalances in relationships, especially back then. Men had so much more power than women. He even took Veronica to see a psychiatrist. She was prescribed some strong medication, maybe even misdiagnosed. She actually talked about this later on, saying she regretted becoming dependent on the medication.
That's so sad to hear. She was trapped in this situation that just became more and more toxic.
Yeah, it's really heartbreaking, and things just spiraled from there. The sources talk about a pattern of abuse, verbal, psychological, even physical violence. Lord Lucan's attempts to control Veronica, they culminated in him trying to have her committed to a mental institution.
Oh my, that's scary. It's clear the marriage had become really dangerous. But it's amazing to me that even after all that, he still tried to use her mental state against her, especially when it came to the kids.
Yeah, the custody battle was brutal. Lord Lucan used those accusations of mental instability to try to paint her as an unfit mother.
Yes.
He even submitted recordings of their arguments.
Really?
Yeah. Veronica claimed he edited them to make her sound irrational.
It was all about control. Even the transcripts from the court, you can feel the tension, the animosity. I remember reading one exchange where Veronica called him a ventriloquist dummy with a mustache stuck on your face.
Oh, wow.
Ouch. In the end, the court gave custody to Veronica.
Which was a huge blow to Lord Lucan, both personally and financially. His gambling was out of control, tons of debt. He was a man on the edge.
And that's when Sandra Rivet enters the picture. This seemingly nice young woman, hired to be the children's nanny. Nobody knew that she would be caught in the middle of all this.
It just shows you how even seemingly ordinary lives can be affected by these extraordinary events with tragic consequences. And it all leads up to that night, November 7th, 1974, the night that changes everything.
Right. And this is where the story takes that really dark turn that we talked about. Lady Lucan was in the basement of their house late at night, and she was attacked brutally.
Yeah.
Can you imagine just being attacked in the dark like that, not knowing who's doing it or why?
It's terrifying to even think about.
The sources describe this chaotic scene. She was hit repeatedly with something. Later, they figured out it was a lead pipe.
Like the kind Lord Lucan used to carry.
Yeah, like a cane. And she's fighting back, screaming. And then there's this pause. And she realizes it's her husband attacking her.
Oh, my God.
It's just horrifying to be attacked by the person you should be able to trust the most. In that moment, did she think she was going to die? What was going through her mind?
I can't even imagine. But she fought back. She grabbed at him. And then she asked about the nanny, Sandra Rivet. And he just said she's dead.
Chilling. Just like that. Another innocent person is gone. But in all of this chaos, Lady Lucan, she's incredibly brave.
I know, right?
And she thinks fast.
She did. According to her, she pretended to agree to help him, to get rid of Sandra's body. It gave her time to plan her escape. He went to the bathroom to get a towel or something. And that's when she ran.
She ran to a pub nearby, the Plumber's Arms, bursting in, covered in blood, telling this horrific story. Can you imagine being there, seeing that?
It must have been absolute chaos.
But her bravery, running for help like that, that's what saves her life. And it's what started the investigation. That eventually leads to Lord Lucan's disappearance.
Right. The police started a huge investigation. They found the lead pipe, covered in blood. And a few days later, they found Lord Lucan's car, abandoned, with a bottle of vodka inside, full.
Sounds like he was unraveling, maybe the alcohol, the desperation. But this is where it gets really weird.
Yeah.
Lord Lucan vanished, just gone, without a trace. It's like something out of a movie.
Right. And he wrote these letters to friends, family, before he disappeared.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He said he was innocent, that some intruder attacked Veronica, that she was delusional, not reliable.
Trying to discredit her.
Yeah. He also said he was worried about his kids and that he might, take his own life.
Wow. So he's trying to control the narrative, even as he's disappearing? Did he really think he could get away with it all? Or was he trying to mislead everyone?
That's the big question, isn't it? Was he planning this all along? Did he actually kill himself? Or is there something else going on here, something we haven't even considered?
These are the questions that have haunted this case for decades. And after that night, the media went crazy. Lord Lucan wasn't just a suspect anymore. He became this huge mystery, a source of speculation. It's strange how someone accused of something so brutal can become almost a legend.
It's the mystery, isn't it? The unanswered questions. It just keeps people interested. Every new detail, every supposed sighting, it fuels the speculation, the conspiracy theories. It's like you can't let go of the possibility that he's still out there, somewhere, living a secret life.
And while everyone's focused on him, Lady Lucan is left dealing with the aftermath. The trauma of the attack, the loss of Sandra Rivet, and the constant public attention. It's just awful.
Yeah, and on top of all that, she's dealing with the effects of the medication she was on. She later said she regretted taking it, that maybe she was misdiagnosed, over-medicated.
It was a different time, wasn't it? Mental health wasn't talked about much, especially for women. You wonder how things might have been different for her if she'd had the support, the understanding that's available now.
Definitely. It makes you think about how society, how medical practices, they can really affect people, their experiences, their whole lives. And for Lady Lucan, this was just one part of a much bigger and much more tragic story.
Yeah, it's easy to get lost in the mystery, the speculation. But we have to remember the human cost of this whole thing. Lady Lucan had to live with the scars, the trauma, the loss of Sandra, The constant media attention, it's just so much.
And don't forget the medication. She was on all those drugs. Later, she said she wished she'd never taken them, that maybe it was the wrong diagnosis, too many pills.
Right, and back then, mental health, it wasn't something people talked about, especially for women. Who knows how things would have been different for her with the kind of help people can get now.
Exactly. It shows how much society and the medical field, how they can really impact people. And for Lady Lucan, this was just one piece of this whole tragic story.
Sadly, there's no happy ending here. Her and her children, they were estranged for years.
Yeah.
She ended up losing custody to her sister. It's just heartbreaking. To go through something so awful and then be separated from your kids, I can't even imagine.
It's the ripple effect of trauma, how one event can just break apart families and leave these lasting scars. But there was a little bit of hope. Her kids, they did go to her funeral. She died back in 2017 at 80 years old.
It's interesting, right? Shows how complicated families are,
Yeah,
even after all that time.
absolutely. Family's always complicated. Lady Lucan, she actually finished writing her memoir just a few weeks before she died. It's like she was trying to make sense of it all, to leave her own version of the story behind. Yeah, the memoir is called A Moment in Time. It gives you a really good look into what she went through. That night, the marriage, the disappearance. She even says she feels awful about what happened to Sandra Rivet, about the consequences of her relationship with Lord Lucan.
It's powerful. Makes you realize how much this whole thing really cost everyone involved. And even though Lady Lucan is gone, the mystery of Lord Lucan, it's still there. Over the years, there have been so many sightings all over the place. South Africa, Australia. Some are probably mistaken identity. Others, maybe people just wanted to believe it was him. But it's still possible that he got away, built a whole new life for himself.
Oh, absolutely. There was that one a few years back. Sandra Rivet's son, Neil Berriman, he was trying to get justice for his mother, worked with a facial recognition expert. They thought they found Lord Lucan, living in Australia, as this older man, part of a Buddhist community. Of course, the guy denied it, and there's no proof. But it's still intriguing.
It's like the story won't go away. Even now, the Lucan case, it just fascinates people, makes them debate, wonder. Will we ever know the truth? Did he get away with it? Did he take his own life? Or is there something else entirely?
That's what makes the story so powerful. It's a mystery that might never be solved. We're left with these questions, the weight of the unknown. But even without the answers, there's still something to learn from it. The social dynamics back then, the power struggles in their marriage, the consequences of anger and control.
And for our listeners, we'll leave you with this. What if you were in Lady Lucan's shoes? How would you handle what happened after that night? It makes you think, doesn't it? About human nature, about resilience, about the search for truth and justice.
The Lucan case, it's a story that just stays with you. Reminds us that some mysteries, they're never truly solved.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into the world of Lady Lucan and the Missing Lord. It's a story that's both tragic and fascinating. We hope you learned something new. And if you enjoyed it, please subscribe so you don't miss our future deep dives. We'll be back soon with another great story. Until then, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep those minds engaged.